The morning was very still. A soft gray light rested on the small kitchen table. The clock on the wall ticked in a slow, steady way, as if it had all the time in the world. Evelyn Hart sat alone by the window. She was in her late 70s now. Her hair was silver and thin, gathered in a loose bun at the back of her head. Her hands, lined and careful, wrapped around a warm mug of tea that she had already forgotten to drink. The chair across from her was empty. It had been empty for years. On the table lay a simple piece of paper. It was from the local community center. The letter invited seniors to write something meaningful, a story, a memory, or a letter to their younger selves. It said the letters might help younger people understand life, love, and loss. Evelyn had read that page many times. The edges were already a little worn. She knew she could ignore it, throw it away, and go on with her quiet days. But the idea would not leave her. She reached for her reading glasses and set them on her nose. The world became sharp again. The words on the page were clear. "Write a letter to your younger self," she whispered. Her voice sounded thin in the silent room. What would I even say? She turned her gaze to the window. Outside, the street was almost empty. A single car passed by. A neighbor walked a small dog. The world went on with its gentle routines, not knowing that one old woman was trying to decide whether to open a very old door in her heart. Evelyn slowly pulled a clean sheet of paper toward her. The paper felt smooth under her fingers. She picked up a pen, then put it down again. Her chest felt tight. It was not a sharp pain, but a deep ache that had lived there for a long time. "Michael," she breathed, almost as if testing whether his name would still answer her. The air did not change. The chair across from her stayed empty, but just saying his name made the room feel fuller, as if a shadow of him had returned for a moment. "Do I really want to go back there?" she asked the quiet kitchen. In her mind, scenes began to rise. A young woman in a simple wedding dress. The first apartment with thin walls and creaky floors. The smell of cheap coffee and hope. Long evenings waiting for the sound of his key in the door. Her fingers tightened around the pen. If she began this letter, she knew she would not be able to stop halfway. She would have to walk through all those years again. The joy, the mistakes, the things she had never dared to say out loud. She closed her eyes and took a slow breath. For a moment, she listened only to the clock on the wall. Each tick sounded like a small reminder. Time had moved on, whether she wanted it to or not. At last, she opened her eyes and touched the pen to the page. Her handwriting was no longer smooth. The letters were a little shaky, but still careful. "Dear Evelyn," she wrote, then paused. She gave a short, nervous laugh. "No, that sounds too formal," she murmured. "You were just a girl." She crossed out the words gently and began again. "My dear girl," she wrote. The words felt warmer, kinder. She stared at the line and felt an unexpected sting behind her eyes. No one had spoken to her like that in a long time. Out loud, she tried the words. "My dear girl, if you could see what I know now." Her voice broke on the last word. She set the pen down and pressed her hand against her mouth. For a few seconds she fought the tears. She did not cry easily anymore. She had learned to hold most feelings inside. But today was different. Today, she was not writing for a stranger. She was writing for the young woman she once was. The girl who thought time was endless. The bride who believed that love alone would fix everything. Evelyn sat up a little straighter. She picked up the pen again. Her hand still trembled, but now there was a small, quiet resolve in the way she held it. She drew in a steady breath. "All right," she whispered. "Let's tell her the truth." The clock ticked on. The tea grew cold. Outside, the day slowly brightened. And at the small kitchen table, an old widow began to write the letter carried her back in time. The kitchen around her faded, and in its place appeared a small church filled with soft afternoon light. The air smelled of lilies and polished wood. A young Evelyn stood at the front, her hands clasped tightly around a small bouquet of white roses. Her face glowed with innocence and hope. She was only 20 then. Her eyes were bright, her smile trembling with excitement. She believed life was opening like a perfect door. At the end of the aisle stood Michael, tall, shy, nervous, and smiling at her as if she were the only person in the world. As old Evelyn wrote, her pen moved slowly but with purpose. "My dear girl," she wrote, "you will feel as if love is enough. And for a time, it is. You will float through these early days, holding happiness like a warm cup between your hands." Young Evelyn walked down the aisle in her memory. Her steps were light, though her heart pounded. When she reached Michael, he whispered, "You look beautiful. Do you really think so?" She whispered back, smiling in a way that only young brides do. "I've never been sure of anything," he said. Old Evelyn paused her writing. The memory felt sharp and clear, almost too gentle to touch. She took a breath and continued her letter. You will believe that this moment will last forever. I wish I could tell you it will. But forever changes shape as the years go by. The scene shifted again. Young Evelyn and Michael stepped out of the church, laughing as friends tossed rice above them. A breeze lifted her veil. Michael took her hand and kissed her knuckles, a simple gesture that made her blush. They moved into their first apartment soon after. The space was tiny, bare walls, 2 mismatched chairs, and a cheap rug that curled at the edges. But they treated it like a castle. They ate dinners on the floor because they had no table. They argued about nothing and made up just as fast. At night, they lay awake whispering dreams to each other. We'll have a garden someday, Evelyn would say. And a porch swing, Michael added. And a dog. And space for your paintings. They laughed and planned and believed life would listen. Old Evelyn wrote carefully. My girl, you will love him deeply. And he will love you in ways he cannot always say. But pay attention to the silences between you. Do not brush them aside. Loneliness can grow even in a room filled with laughter. Young Evelyn appeared again, sitting by the window of their apartment. She waited for Michael, who worked long hours even early in their marriage. She checked the clock often, then reshaped her hair, then checked again. When he finally walked in, exhausted and distracted, she hid her disappointment behind a smile. Long day? She asked softly. The usual, he answered, rubbing his eyes. You hungry? Not really. Just tired. He kissed her forehead, but his mind was far away. And she told herself it was fine. She told herself this was what grown-up life looked like. Old Evelyn's pen hesitated. My sweet girl, she wrote, you will learn to stay quiet when you should speak. You will fear making him worry. You will swallow your loneliness because you think it is the loving thing to do. But love needs honesty. Evelyn steadied her hand as she continued to write. The memory shifted once more, settling into the early years of marriage, years full of small efforts, quiet sacrifices, and the slow shaping of 2 young people who were trying to build a life together. Young Evelyn stood in a narrow kitchen, stirring a pot of soup. The room was warm, crowded with the smell of onions and broth. A small radio on the counter played soft music. She hummed along, hoping the gentle tune would lighten the tired mood that had settled in their home. Michael came in, shoulders heavy, his tie loosened, his briefcase hanging low in his hand. You're home, she said with a hopeful smile. Yeah, he replied, rubbing the back of his neck. Sorry, I'm late again. It's okay, she whispered. Dinner's almost ready. He nodded but didn't look at her long. His mind was already turning somewhere else, numbers, deadlines, the weight of things he didn't talk about. Old Evelyn wrote slowly, her pen creating a soft scratching sound in the quiet kitchen. My girl, these are the years you both try your best, but you rarely say what you truly feel. Young Evelyn set the table with care. 2 bowls, 2 spoons, a small vase, holding a single daisy she bought from a street vendor. She wanted their simple dinners to feel like something special. Michael sat down and tried to smile. This looks good, he said. Tell me about your day? She asked gently. He paused. Nothing much. Just work. She nodded, though she wished he would say more, something true, something warm. But she didn't press. She never pressed. Old Evelyn continued writing. You believe that asking for more makes you needy. You believe that staying silent makes you strong. But silence becomes a habit, and habits become a wall. The memory shifted again. Young Evelyn and Michael were walking home from the grocery store. The sky was a pale shade of blue, and the street smelled of rain. She carried a bag in her arms. He carried the heavier ones without complaint. You know, he said, we're doing okay. Better than I thought we would at this point. She smiled. I think so too. We'll get that porch swing someday, he added. And the garden, she replied. Yeah, the garden. Their steps were slow, comfortable. They didn't talk about their worries that day. They chose hope instead. Back in the present, old Evelyn's pen moved again. Hope keeps you going, my girl. But hope without honesty is fragile. You will learn this later. The scene softened into another memory. Young Evelyn sat on the sofa, legs tucked beneath her, watching Michael repair a loose drawer. His sleeves were rolled up, and a small smile played on his lips as he worked. You're good with your hands, she teased. He laughed lightly. Someone has to keep this place from falling apart. Thank you. Evelyn's pen hovered for a moment before the next memory formed. This time, the picture was of a modest home filled with the noise of growing children. Small feet running across wooden floors, laughter echoing down narrow hallways, and the constant hum of a life too busy to slow down. Young Evelyn stood in the doorway of the kitchen. Her children, 2 boys and a girl, were eating cereal at the table. She wiped her hands on a towel, watching them with a soft smile. Their little faces were messy with milk. Their chatter filled the room like music. Michael walked in, already dressed for work. He kissed each child on the head, then gave Evelyn a quick, distracted peck on her cheek. "You'll be home for dinner?" she asked. "We'll see," he replied, checking his watch. "I've got late meetings." She nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. "Be safe," she said. "Always," he answered as he rushed out. Old Evelyn wrote in slow, thoughtful strokes. "My girl, this is where the quiet distance begins. You tell yourself it's just a busy season. But busy seasons stretch into years, and years turn into a kind of silence you learn to live with." The memory shifted to the living room. Toys scattered everywhere. A laundry basket overflowing. The afternoon sun slanting through dusty windows. Young Evelyn cleaned as the children played nearby. She folded shirts, sorted socks, wiped crumbs from the table. Her movements were quick and practiced. She rarely sat down. There was always something to do. Her daughter tugged at her skirt. "Mommy, can you color with me?" "In a minute," Evelyn said. "Let me finish this." But the minute never came. Dinner needed cooking. Homework needed checking. Michael's shirts needed ironing. In the present, old Evelyn paused and whispered, "You meant well, my girl, but you were always running, always chasing the next task." She wrote again, "You believed love was in what you did for everyone, but sometimes love lives in the moments you stop and simply sit with them." A new memory rose: the small backyard behind their house. Late afternoon light. A gentle breeze carrying the smell of cut grass. Young Evelyn and the children waited outside. A little grill smoked beside them. She wore a sundress. She had brushed her hair and even put on a bit of lipstick. It was their anniversary, and she hoped Michael would come home early. The children played tag while she watched the gate, waiting, hoping. Hours passed. The sun dropped lower. The food grew cold. Finally, Michael arrived, exhausted. "I'm sorry," he said. "Work ran long." She forced a smile. "It's all right. You're here now." But her eyes were tired. Her heart even more so. Old Evelyn's pen tightened. "My girl, this is the night you learned how it feels. When love is taken for granted. You forgave him easily. You always forgave him. But inside, a small part of you dimmed." In the memory, young Evelyn sat alone later that night. A quiet heaviness filled Evelyn's chest as she began writing the next part. This was the chapter she still had trouble touching, even after so many years. Yet she pressed her pen to the page and allowed the memory to return. It was early winter. The wind outside their home was sharp and cold, pressing against the windows, like a patient visitor. Snow covered the neighborhood in a soft white blanket, making the whole world feel slower, quieter, and strangely fragile. Young Evelyn, now older, her children grown, her hair showing its first strands of gray, stood at the foot of their bed. Michael lay there, his face thinner, his skin pale, his breath shallow. The illness had come quickly, too quickly for either of them to prepare. Old Evelyn wrote with a trembling hand, "My girl, this is the season that will take your breath away. You will try to be brave. You will tell yourself you can handle it. But nothing prepares you for the moment when the person you built your life with grows smaller before your eyes." In the memory, Evelyn gently pulled the blanket up around his shoulders. "It's getting colder," she whispered. Michael gave a faint smile. "You always fuss over me," he murmured. "And you always pretend you don't like it," she answered softly. He closed his eyes, trying to rest. The room was dim. A small lamp cast a warm glow against the walls. The sound of the heater rattling in the corner filled the silence. Old Evelyn wrote again. "You will sit for hours beside him reading, humming, or saying nothing at all. You think silence will make the moment less real. But silence only deepens the truth." In the memory, young Evelyn sat in the chair beside the bed. She held Michael's hand, rubbing her thumb gently across his knuckles. His fingers were cold, too cold. She brought them close to her cheek, as if her warmth could reach him. "Do you need anything?" she asked. "No," he whispered. "Just stay." A small tremor passed through his voice. She squeezed his hand more tightly. Outside, snowflakes tapped softly against the window. It felt as though the world was waiting with them. Old Evelyn paused her writing. She inhaled a long, steady breath before continuing. "My girl, these days will blur together, nights filled with half-sleep, days filled with gentle lies. You tell each other so it hurts less." Another memory surfaced. A doctor stood at the foot of the bed. His face was kind but strained. He spoke softly. "There's not much time left. Young Evelyn nodded, though she felt the room tilt slightly. "Thank you," she whispered. After the doctor left, the next page felt heavier than the others. Evelyn rested her fingertips on it for a moment, letting the weight settle in her chest. Then she began to write, each stroke slow and deliberate, as if her heart were guiding her hand. It was late at night in the memory. The winter storm outside had calmed, leaving only a quiet, steady fall of snow. The world seemed to be holding its breath. Inside the bedroom, the lamp glowed softly, casting long shadows across the walls. The air was still, almost sacred. Michael lay in the bed, his breath faint and uneven. His eyes were closed, but he was not asleep. His body looked fragile, as though one strong gust of wind could carry him away. Young Evelyn sat beside him, both hands wrapped around his. She felt the coldness of his skin spreading slowly upward, inch by inch. She wanted to stop it. She wanted to warm every part of him with her own body, her own breath. Old Evelyn wrote carefully, "My girl, this night will live in your soul. You will replay every second for years. The things you said, the things you didn't, the way the world shifted in the space of one quiet hour." In the memory, the room hummed softly with the sound of the heater. Outside, the snow muffled all noise, making the world feel very far away. Michael stirred slightly. "Evie," he whispered, barely audible. She leaned close. "I'm here." His eyes fluttered open. They were tired, unfocused, searching for her face. When they found it, a faint smile touched his lips. "You look worried," he murmured. "I'm not," she lied gently. "You always worry," he said, his voice thin but warm enough to carry their entire life together. Young Evelyn brushed her fingers along his forehead. "Can I get you anything?" "No," he breathed. "Just stay with me, please." She nodded, her throat tightening. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Old Evelyn's pen slowed. She wrote the next line with care. "My girl, this is when you learn that love's final act is presence. Not words, not promises, just presence." The memory deepened. Young Evelyn leaned close and pressed her forehead against his. "You remember our first apartment?" she whispered. He gave a small nod. "The one with the broken radiator?" he said, managing a weak laugh. She smiled through her tears. "And the leaky roof. And the neighbors who played loud music," he added. "You hated that music." He swallowed with difficulty. "I liked it because you'd dance to it." Evelyn let out a soft, aching laugh. "You always said I had two left feet." "I said you were brave for dancing anyway," he whispered. The air in the room shifted. Young Evelyn squeezed his hand, feeling his grip weaken. "Michael," she said softly, "are you in pain?" "No," he answered, though it wasn't entirely true. "Just tired." "Then rest," she whispered. He looked at her again, his eyes clearer for a brief moment. "I love you, Evie." She choked on the breath she had been holding. "I love you too," she said. "Always, always." Old Evelyn paused her writing. Her hand trembled slightly before she continued. "My girl, these are the last words he will ever speak to you awake." The memory quieted. Michael's breathing slowed. Young Evelyn watched each rise and fall of. Evelyn touched the next page as if it might crumble beneath her fingers. The hardest part had passed, yet what came after was a different kind of pain. Quieter, deeper, and stretched across years instead of minutes. She began to write, her letters slow but steady. The memory opened to a silent house. It was the morning after Michael's passing. Young Evelyn stepped into the kitchen, still wearing the same clothes from the night before. Her eyes were swollen, her hair tangled, and her breathing shallow, as though each inhale scraped against her ribs. The house felt wrong. It was too quiet, too still. Even the air seemed different, heavy and untouched. Old Evelyn wrote, "My girl, no one tells you that grief sounds like silence. A silence so thick it feels alive." In the memory, the sun filtered through the curtains, casting soft lines across the table. Michael's mug still sat near the sink. His scarf hung on the back of the chair. His book lay open on the armrest of the sofa, a bookmark resting halfway through the chapter he would never finish. Young Evelyn touched the mug. It was cool. Everything was cool now. She whispered, "Good morning." The words fell into the air and disappeared. Old Evelyn continued writing. "You will try to keep your routines. You will think washing dishes or sweeping the floor will ease the ache. But the ache is patient. It waits in every corner." In the memory, Evelyn opened a cupboard, took out a box of cereal, then froze. The sound of the cupboard door echoing in the room made her flinch. She poured cereal into a bowl but could not bring herself to eat it. She placed the spoon down and pushed the bowl away. She wandered to the living room. She sat in Michael's chair, then immediately stood again. It didn't feel right. It felt like sitting on something sacred. Old Evelyn wrote slowly. You won't know where to put yourself. Every room will feel too big. Every object will feel too loud. His absence will follow you like a shadow. Another memory surfaced. Young Evelyn walked into their bedroom. The bed was still unmade. She smoothed his pillow with trembling hands, her fingertips tracing the faint indentation where his head had rested. She pressed her face into the pillow and breathed in the faded scent of him soap, paper, something warm she could never quite name. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I don't know how to do this." The room answered with silence. Old Evelyn rested her hand on her heart before writing the next line. "My girl, you will spend months asking questions no one can answer. You will wonder if you could have loved him better, if you could have seen his struggles sooner. But listen to me, grief makes you doubt everything. Do not let it turn you against yourself." In the memory, the children visited often at first. They brought food, stayed for dinner, tried to fill the rooms with laughter. But after a while, life pulled them back into their own routines. Evelyn didn't blame them. But the house grew quieter still. One evening, she sat by the window with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Snow fell outside again, slow and gentle. She watched it the way one watches a fire. For warmth, for company, for something that feels alive. She spoke softly into the empty room. "Are you still here, Michael?" There was no answer. Yet she felt something, a memory, a warmth, a presence that was not sound or sight but something deeper. Old Evelyn wrote, "My girl, the truth is he never fully leaves. Not in the way you fear. But it will take years for you to feel him gently instead of painfully." Evelyn rested her hand on the final blank page. The hardest memories had already been written. What remained now was not pain, but truth. The kind of truth a woman learns only after carrying a lifetime of love, regret, and quiet courage. She lifted her pen and began. The scene opened to the present-day kitchen. Morning light spilled through the window. Dust floated gently in the warm glow. The chair across from her was still empty, but now it carried less ache and more acceptance. Old Evelyn sat at the table, her letter nearly complete. Her hair was silver, her eyes soft, her breath steady. She looked older than her years, yet somehow lighter, as though writing these pages had loosened the knots time had tightened inside her. She read over her words so far, then whispered, "All right, my girl, it's time." She wrote the final message to her younger self. "My dear girl, you will spend so much of your life waiting for the right moment, waiting for someone to understand you without asking, waiting for love to feel easy, waiting for grief to fade. But hear this, life is not in the waiting, life is in the reaching." As she continued, the memory world around her shifted. Young Evelyn appeared not as she was at 20 or 40, but as a soft blend of all the ages she had been. She stood across the room, watching her older self with wide, wondering eyes. Old Evelyn smiled at her gently, as if greeting a daughter she had not seen in a long time. "You tried so hard," she whispered aloud. "You did your best. You really did." The young woman blinked, her expression uncertain. Old Evelyn wrote on, "My girl, speak more. Do not hide your loneliness. Do not swallow your needs because you fear burdening someone. Honesty will save you far more than silence ever will." Young Evelyn stepped closer, arms at her sides, eyes glistening. Old Evelyn continued, "Love him. Love Michael with your whole heart. But do not disappear inside that love. You are allowed to want, to ache, to ask." A soft wind entered through the cracked window, stirring the curtains gently. Young Evelyn's outline shimmered, as though she were made of sunlight and memory. Old Evelyn placed a hand over her heart, and wrote the next lines with great care. "My girl, happiness is not something you reach someday. It is in the cup of tea you drink while the house is quiet. It is in the way he says your name. It is in a child's laughter, a friend's kindness, a warm morning breeze. Do not rush past the ordinary. That is where your life truly lives." Young Evelyn lifted her hand as if to touch these words in the air. Old Evelyn's pen slowed, but her expression remained steady. "And when the end comes, his, and eventually yours, know this. Love does not leave. It only changes its shape. You will carry him in your breath, your bones, your quiet moments. He will walk with you in the spaces between thoughts. He is not gone. Not really." The younger version of herself finally smiled through tears, a soft, grateful smile that seemed to bridge decades. Old Evelyn breathed deeply and wrote her final message. "My dear girl, forgive yourself. Be brave in your love. Be gentle with your heart. And live every day, not as if time is endless, but as if every small moment matters. Because it does." She set the pen down slowly. Her hand shook, but not from sadness, from release, from peace. She folded the pages of the letter, pressing them together with great care.